It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. Take Command Podcast. That's Logan Paulsen. Yeah, that's him right there with the beard. I'm Craig Hoffman, freshly without a beard, here and ready to talk football with you, Logan, fresh off the practice field after Thursday's practice as we record this on Thursday morning around 10:30 a.m., just in case anything silly happens between now and the time that you listen, because silly things tend to happen this time of year. That said, we are going to do a 53-man roster projection today. So the first one that we will do, doing it after a week of camp. There's been a little bit of news. Nate Erbig, for instance, retiring, and some guys emerging. And so obviously we still have another week till the first preseason game, and we'll probably do our next one after that. But I feel like this is a good time to kind of stop down, check in, see what's happening, look at some early things. And Logan, I think it's a really good way to kind of organize thoughts around each position group, because otherwise you wind up missing and skipping some things. So we'll get to that here in a few minutes. But we'll start with the practice report from today, a day where the offense found a little bit of a groove. It sounded like, Logan, certainly one of their better days they've had in a while, even if they didn't just own and destroy the practice.
Yeah, I thought today was a really good day, honestly, for a better day for the offense, and I think they had this is their second day in pads. And so second day in pads is awesome. And to see them kind of, especially in the run game, kind of find some gashes, which is really cool to see. Like, I think ran a couple traps, couple whams, and it wasn't like every run was a gash, but they had a couple that hit clean, which, as a offensive player, like that's what you're looking for in this type of setting. You just wanted to get the back through clean to the second level. And on some of those runs, it wasn't even clean to the second level of the defense. He was into the third level of the defense because they had brought some type of pressure. They had kind of penetrated the pressure, and then they were off to the races. Like Merritt had a really nice run today. And Chris Rodriguez, shout out to old 36, had 2 or 3 where he was just – he looks like he's in really good shape. Looks like he's a little bit quicker through the hole, and he's got that powerful build. So if he gets that downhill steam, he's got the ability to do some stuff there. So I thought pretty solid day from that standpoint. I think they did find some explosive opportunities. Debo Samuel's down the field. Jalen Lane had a couple. But on the whole, I think a better day for the offense. But it also felt like, to me, defensively, they were trying some new stuff out, just giving guys opportunities versus different personnel. Like Carlin Vigors, for example, had a couple reps with the ones today. He's matched up with Debo Samuels on the explosive play. Really good coverage by him. Really, excellent phase, no PI, goes up to play the ball. Ball's in a perfect spot. Great throw by Jaden. Great job by Debo. But, I think you're just trying to see kind of some of these younger pieces who have been playing well, how that looks going into, kind of the joint practice.
Right. And that's the thing too. You were texting me your notes as you have been, and which is always fun because I'm like, wait, who's that number again? You were out there in training camp with 90 guys, man. It is guys change numbers, whatever. It's always fun to try to decipher. I'm constantly just pulling up the roster being like, oh yeah, that guy. But when you say 22, a number that you've definitely sent a lot, like he's been involved in a lot of action. Carlin Vigors, the undrafted free agent corner, touchdown Debo on him. And it's like, yeah, that's how it should be. But to hear that, he's really competing, he's right there. And, that's encouraging. But, you'd hope that Debo can position his body just right, that Jaden can make that throw on an undrafted free agent in his 6th practice or 7th practice, whatever it is. So, that's kind of good all around. Hey, man, make it tough. That's your job as a DB. And he's a guy that I think is probably going to wind up on the practice squad. But that's the thing about early in camp, and knock on all of the wood everywhere. You never know what kind of injuries might pop up, and all you can do if you're a guy like Carlin Vigors or Ja'Cory Brooks or some of these UDFAs is do the absolute best you can and see what happens in front of you. And if a guy either doesn't play well, we'll talk about maybe a guy who's struggling to find some footing at receiver in a little bit that might open the door for a guy like Brooks, or something, God forbid, happens to a guy, even if it's more short term, but it affects the first month or so of the season and a pup type of thing comes into place. I think that is what you're trying to do if you're a guy like Vigors. And it sounds like there's a couple of UDFAs that are starting to do that and continue to show out in this practice.
Yeah, and I think that's always good to see is obviously one of the things Adam Peters has done a great job of is identifying needs, filling needs with free agent acquisitions and with draft picks. But the thing I think he's probably been best at, quite honestly, is UDFAs and really capitalizing on that group, because you get guys like Carlin Vigors who, it's impressive for a UDFA, a guy that, 32 teams passed on 7 times, to come in and kind of look like a ball player. Same thing with McDaniels. Like there's a lot of kind of the fact that those guys could eventually develop into something, I think is a testament to Adam and this coaching staff, right? That they understand kind of exactly what they're looking for, understand kind of what plays at the position and what plays in the defense. And again, like, I think that's pretty exciting, kind of getting some of these down, like even Ben Nichols, number 48, he looks like a linebacker. He's playing safety from Iowa State. Like he has a nice PBU today, takes a great angle on a tackle. Like that guy was an undrafted free agent last year. And so for them to be providing depth to the roster in that way is exactly what you're looking for. Because again, like you got to maximize every kind of personnel acquisition down the road, and everyone forgets about UDFAs. But that group seems to be doing a nice job. Even Ja'Cory Brooks, like you mentioned also. Yeah,
and also when you make the trades like you do for Tunsil and Samuel, and like you don't have as many draft picks. I know that they had, 11 last year. So if you're on pace for the 21 over a 3-year stretch, which is kind of how Adam described it in the spring, then you're okay. And they can still reacquire some draft picks coming into the next draft. They should get a comp pick for John Allen. So there's other ways it's coming in, but I mean, ultimately what you're looking for, the reason why draft picks are so important in this league right now, especially with guys like Terry wanting new money and Tunsil and Lattimore and all these guys up next year, is you need cheap labor. To put it in the bluntest possible terms. And if you can find that cheap labor of a really high, playable caliber in whether it's special teams depth or actual offensive or defensive starters, or at least rotation players on the undrafted free agent level, the labor doesn't get any cheaper than that. And so that's another way you can overcome and use your draft capital to get your high-end talent by trade, and then still have a roster that works on your balance sheet and your cap sheet that ultimately can win you some football games on Sundays. As for the rest of the practice today, Logan, team run was a big emphasis. I guess the good news is the offense had some really nice plays. The alternate side of that is the Commanders are also playing defense on those. So what did you see if you look at it from a defensive perspective in today's team run, especially since that's been such a focus?
Yeah, I think it was a very balanced day. So this is the day, though, I think if you're a Commanders fan, you feel really good about the day. You see some kind of splash plays from the offense with regards to the run, but also you see some great physicality from the defense. And I think that's kind of exactly what you want. You want the defense to get a tackle for a loss, and you want the offense to hit a 10-yard run. Like you want them to kind of be at each other's throat in a competitive fight. And I think that's what you see. And I think, we've talked a lot about the defensive line, the linebackers, the secondary, how well those respective groups have been playing. And I think it held true today. Like I didn't come out of this being like, oh man, the defense is regressing. I just thought like, this is the offense put in a couple different runs, different like kind of stylistic runs, kind of honestly more of their like bread and butter, like, the bounce plays, the trap plays, some of the stuff that really got a lot of miles for them. Those look good today because the team knows them. They know how to execute them at a high level. And I thought there were some good opportunities there. So that's great to see, but also like the defense made great plays today. So there was a kind of interesting play where, they're working an RPO from the gun. Dietrich Wise is unblocked. He's attacking Jaden Daniels. The defense does a great job covering the flat in the corner to the RPO read side. And Dietrich is kind of like breaking down with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels kind of throws a move. And then there's a little bit of chirping about like, I would have tackled you. And Jaden Daniels was like, no way you would have, I mean, like that's so like, right. Was that a win for the defense? Is that a win for the offense? But it's a competitive down is what I'm saying. Right. And that's real NFL football. So you don't want one side kind of running away with it. Right. There's, contested catches down the field where DBs are making plays on the football. Again, that's good stuff. Like, even though like Jalen Lane had two explosive catches down the field, like that's awesome for the offense, but the people forget about the defense in those moments kind of executing at a high level also, where it's like, oh, that's an incomplete pass. Who cares? But that's a win for the defense. So.
For sure. And the answer to the offense or defense have won that down on the Wise Daniels thing is probably the offense because it's Jaden Daniels, but probably Dietrich Wise against almost any other quarterback unless they play Baltimore this year. So that's the fun thing of we've seen the Daniels Houdini before in real games, but we also know that what works against basically everyone else doesn't always work against him. All right, last thing. I'm going to give you a second. Welcome to Logan's tight end corner. How much fun is it for you watching Zach Ertz continue to just be ridiculously good at football?
I mean, it's funny. Like it's the offense plays better when he's in because all of a sudden you have someone who can consistently win versus man coverage. And so like you're watching kind of the low red zone stuff. He runs a choice, makes a tough catch, really tough catch. Like the ball's a little out in front. The DB's kind of playing through his hands, kind of bobbles it, makes a nice catch. runs a flat route on an RPO, kind of puts a little seasoning on it, is wide open in the flat. Jaden gets it to him. They're down in the opposite end of the field, kind of in the competitive move the ball red zone period later in practice. Zach Ertz runs a high cross completion to him. And obviously offensive efficiency moves up when you've got guys that can win matchups, right? So we've waxed poetic about Zach Ertz a million times on this show, but it's because it has a huge impact on the offense. It's like you've got right now in terms of guys making plays from the offensive standpoint with the first group, it's Zach Ertz, Deebo Samuel, a little bit of Jalen Lane with the first group. He's kind of been a dominant player with the twos, but when he's in with the ones, he's made some plays in the red zone. And then those are the guys that have been making the most of their opportunities. And as you move down the list, there's guys like Colston Yankoff, who I think has had a great, probably 3 or 4 days in terms of doing some of that Zach Ertz receiver stuff and kind of feeling like Zach Ertz in terms of twitch and movement skills. We know what a great special teams player he is. So you got to give him his shout out here, I think. Absolutely. And then you're still kind of waiting for that next playmaker to emerge. So when we're talking about Zach, it's easy because it just jumps off the practice field when you watch it, because you're looking for kind of who's going to step up, who's going to fill out those other 3 or 4 receiver spots. Because I'm going to mention a guy here in Strachan, he shows up every day with a big play, catch down the field. He also has the negative of that, where he jumps up, he makes good route, good body position, jumps up, hands on the football, and it's a drop. And so I'm waiting for him to kind of take that next step and say, I deserve that spot, right? In the same way that you're kind of waiting for more to do the same. You're waiting for someone to stamp it. Guys are playing well, but you need someone to stamp it the same way those 3 guys I just mentioned have stamped it.
For sure. Ben Sinnott, by the way, I guess wasn't on the field today. We'll see if there's an update from Quinn on him when they practice again Saturday. They're off again tomorrow, so we'll see what's up with Ben Sinnott. He obviously missed some time with the shoulder and then had the black jersey on most of the spring, where no contact jersey as he was recovering. But he's I think, looked good by most reports, but we'll see what's up with the injury there, presuming that's why he was not on the field. So with that, we can talk about every single relevant player next, because we're going to name a 53-man roster. It's early, but this is what we do in this time of year.
I was going to say, this is good, I think, also kind of heading into the joint practice, to kind of see where guys are and then see where guys are coming out of it.
For sure. So with that, let's get to it. We'll start with the offense next on Take Command. Is it never too early for a 53-man roster projection? Well, we're not the first one to do it, so it's clearly not too early. Take Command. I'm Craig. He's Logan. Let's get into it. I know that I did one already. This is my second one, because we did one right before I left on the radio show. And I know Standig did one, which was really good. Shout out to Ben and his new Substack. If you want to get really great Commanders coverage, definitely subscribe to Ben's new venture. But we're going to roll here. And we also actually did real research before the show. Did it. Went on the internet myself. So I have the numbers, Logan, for what they did last year at these positions. Yep. So when we start with quarterback, because that is the logical place to start, last year they wound up keeping 3 with Jeff Driscoll. I just don't see how they keep 3 this year. I think there are too many other good players, and I think they trust Hartman and or Johnson to potentially be on practice squad. And I think they can probably get them both there, at which point you don't need to use one of your 53 roster spots on a third emergency quarterback. I know there's some benefit to it because they rechanged the rules and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think there's room on the roster for a third. And I know Mariota hasn't been practicing, but to me, this seems like it's Daniels, Mariota, and let's keep it moving. But what do you think about the prospect of keeping a third?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. A couple people have asked me about it, and I'm glad I get to address it here on the podcast. So first thing I'd say is I think Hartman's had a pretty good, training camp so far. I mean, there's been some inconsistencies, but pretty good. Johnson, I think, wasn't getting a lot of reps early, has kind of gotten more reps now that Mariota's out. So you get a really nice juxtaposition of both of them. And so what I would say is my thought is as the preseason goes and as those guys get a lot of reps, let's say Sam Hartman comes out and just looks like he's looked in training camp, right? Where he's going against kind of backups and really dealing and got a good relationship with the backup, kind of position player groups, and you can't get them. You don't feel like you can get him to practice squad. I think that could be a really interesting decision there, because I do think to give him his flowers, like today I thought he struggled a little bit, but I think prior to this, he's looked very sharp in terms of his command of the offense. So he's a guy that if he has a really solid preseason, like very solid, I think he could be the third guy, and I think he would warrant that third spot. But I do agree with you. As of right now, I think he probably is a guy you feel comfortable getting to practice squad. But in terms of things to watch coming out of the joint practice, coming out of this preseason game with New England, like if Sam Hartman comes out and looks like he's looked in training camp, like watch out, because I think we might have to keep 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I think the other thing with that is I wonder how much communication happens where like is an agent being told by their teams, hey man, if your guy gets cut, then we're going to sign him. And does that information, can it get back to someone like Adam?
Sure.
And like how, that's part of the job if you're a general manager is to understand the scope of the league. Like how risky really is it to do that? And so that is something that I think is that's nothing we're ever probably going to know. Or maybe we do find out, they kept him because they found out Team X was going to sign him. But I think for right now, I'm comfortable just saying, let's go 2. I think the other guys they would have to give up are probably more valuable and less likely to be able to get to practice squad. Running back is super interesting.
Super interesting.
Ben had 3, and the guy that he had not making it compared to the guys that I did in my first radio one was Jeremy McNichols. Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, Bill seem like locks. Bill drafted, playing very well. Eckler and Robinson, your 2 starters, if you will. Is that one? Like, is that a lock? Like, is B-Rob making it over Chris Rodriguez with the presence of Bill, et cetera, still a lock? Or is that like a radio hot take? And then what about McNichols as a guy who can play on all 3 downs at like a competent level and was a key backup for them last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think they love McNichols, and I think they're going to do a lot to try and keep him on the roster. I think he's a culture guy. Like, he handles himself well in and outside of the building. You watch him, he's a pro at practice. Like, he's a guy that you want to make the team. I'm a huge fan of Chris Rodriguez, and I think he's looked pretty sharp. He's limited compared to some of the other guys, which is what we've talked about. But in terms of being a pure runner, like, I'm not sure there's a better pure runner on the roster, and I think obviously you can make an argument that Bill is that guy. We've talked about B-Rob's athleticism. To me, this is maybe the most interesting position in terms of position battle on the entire team. So if you said, hey man, they keep 4 and B-Rob doesn't make the team, or they trade B-Rob, or like, that would not surprise me. Or hey, B-Rob's a starter, great. Like, that wouldn't surprise me either. I think it's really just depends on stuff that we can't know, which is what I mean is like, how are they as professionals inside and outside of the building? Like how again, the other one that catches me with B-Rob is like, he's up next year. So do you like, if there's a trade opportunity for a guy who's up next year, like, do you pull that string? Like, I don't know, like, because he does seem to have value around the league. So that's
right. For instance, like Joe Mixon started the season on PUP in Houston. If Houston calls you and is like, hey, especially if they want to give you one of your picks back. But if you want to get a draft pick from Houston for Brian Robinson, and you have Chris Rodriguez and you have Bill and you have Eckler and you have McNichols, like I think B-Rob, I think it's like these 2 sentences don't feel like they go together, but B-Rob is probably the best back on the team and is also okay if you trade him.
Yeah, and I think that, again, speaks to kind of this analytics approach to the position, right? Like the analytic difference between B-Rob and like Chris Rodriguez is not huge, right? You feel it as a fan. You see the difference in athleticism, but like in this offense, I'm not sure it makes the biggest of differences, right? Especially if you have, if Bill is the guy that we think he can be, and he's had a really good couple of days of camp. But and the only reason I say B-Rob as a trade value is because he does have name recognition. He does have value. He started a lot of games. So, and I'm not saying they're going to do that, but this one is really interesting to me because let's say Bill comes on and looks like the dude. Right now, you have a surplus value at the position, or C-Rod has a great preseason, and you can't get him to practice squad. Like, all of a sudden, you got 2 dudes, and I think they want to keep McNichols. I think they want to keep Eckler. Like, those guys feel like as close to locks as you can get. Obviously, there's things that change, but I do think there is a lot of room here for flexibility depending on how the stuff at New England goes, the stuff in the first preseason game goes, and then the rest of the subsequent preseason. And that's where I'm like, this one, I don't know, because I think we still need more information.
And you talk about trade value, like most teams or a lot of teams have this problem. So like how much trade value is there really? And like that
Correct.
becomes a hard thing too of like, well, is it really worth it for a 7th round? Like, is that analytical difference worth a 7th round pick? Maybe not. Maybe a 5th, like that's a different situation. But you're not going to get a 1st or 2nd or 3rd or probably even a 4th rounder. No. And so like, what's it worth to you? And especially because there are so many good backs that get cut around the league. It's such a bizarre position in that way. But in terms of the actual projection, are we going for Robinson, Eckler, McNichols, Krosky, Merritt?
That's kind of
like
what
that
I feel.
Feels right.
That
and
feels
you'll
right
pray that Rodriguez gets to practice squad?
Yeah, I think so. I think that feels good. And again, like even Felton's had a pretty solid camp, catching the football, doing some man-to-man coverage kind of stuff that has caught my eye. But, you can only keep 4. And I think Eckler is a guy, Robinson, McNichols, and Merritt feel like the 4 you want to keep.
All right, tight end. I know, Logan, you want to keep 7, but we're going to, I think, narrow it down. In some ways, this feels obvious, right?
Yeah.
It's Ertz, Sennett, Bates,
easy.
Yankoff.
This one feels easy, especially with Yankoff playing as well as he is on offense right now. I think he definitely deserves an opportunity to make the 53. I mean, the offensive production I've seen from him in camp, coupled with the special teams, like I thought, maybe Tyree, but he's got the shoulder thing going on. Even Cager, like I saw him talking to the trainer today, he had like a sleeve on his knee. Like, where's he at health wise, right? Yeah. Cole Turner feels like a guy you could easily get to practice squad. And again, if you're just comparing offensive production, Yankoff's been, very, very good. So Zach, Bates, Ben, I think has got, again, he's not maybe flashed the way fans wanted to, but I think he's had a very consistent camp. And Yankoff, this one feels like kind of status quo.
All right, let's not spend any extra time on it then, because we got 2 position groups left on offense, and this is where things get fun. Receiver.
Whoa. All right, here we go.
Yeah. Last year they kept 6. By the way, these were the 6. McLaurin, De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Olamide Zaccheaus, Jamison Crowder. Can you name the 6th?
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I can.
The answer is no. Byron Pringle was the 6th.
Oh yeah, no way. No way I could have named that one.
Respectfully to Byron Pringle. Yeah. No, I went, wait, what? He was on the team last year? He was for like 5 minutes. I think 6 is the right number, and I think 5 of them are pretty easy. The 6th one is the one that's hard. McLaurin, Debo, Luke, Jalen Lane, Noah Brown. Those feel pretty locky.
So
Terry, Debo,
yep.
Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, Noah Brown. Any chance outside of something very silly happening that any of those 5 don't make it?
Those feel like the most consistent, like the most likely to make it. It feels that way, and I think then you look at that 6th receiver spot, which is weird because you have Lane in there too, who's going to be a little bit of a returner. So that 6th receiver spot feels like maybe like a gunner, flyer type role, 2-1 kickoff type guy, which Moore has done, which Strachan has done. So I would kind of say it's a 2-horse race between those guys. And people say, why not Gallup? Gallup doesn't play teams. So that's where, unless he kind of hits an offensive rhythm here over the next couple, which is entirely possible. Like I feel like it's going to go to one of those guys who are better on teams like Strachan today. They were doing like a vice drill, and he's 6'6". So he kind of throws the first guy down, is able to turn the corner and probably makes a play on the returner if it's real life with pads on in a game. So if he can do some of that stuff in preseason, like that's the one, and more too. He's done that too. So I'm going to kind of clump both those guys together. Those feel like the guys that have a shot at the roster here.
Moore had such a good spring and was playing a lot, and I think from what I know has been still playing a lot in Terry's spot. Yeah. Like a guy that they truly trust on the outside. He's a 10-year vet. Like he just has the know-how. You can trust him in a way that's going to be harder to trust a guy like Strachan, who's a little bit younger. Although he's not like super young, right?
I think he's in 25.
Yeah, he's been around a little bit. But I think the Gallup thing, that was always a super duper flyer. And there's a chance that he's still just super rusty and maybe he can knock the rust off. But I do think the special teams point is a really good one because while Jalen Lane is probably going to play some on teams, obviously his value is best on teams as a returner. And, Luke, I know that today he struggled a little bit on some of the special teams stuff. Like he's a former quarterback. Like that's not going to be where he excels. So getting a guy who's a rotational receiver piece that can be a go down and get it on special teams kind of guy, that does feel important. So again, it's July 31st. We're not even in August yet. Who do you want to put in as wide receiver 6 right now?
I think I've seen it. It depends on what you want. Do you want the reliability of Moore? Do you want the flashes of Strachan, or do you want the youth of like Ja'Cory Brooks as an example? I think Ja'Cory Brooks is going to be on the outside looking in, but if I had to put money on it, and again, I'm a tradesy guy. Like I like the idea of having a tall guy on the team, but I'd probably go Strachan just as of right now. But now that I'm talking to myself and thinking about it objectively, I'm going to retract that. I'm going to say Moore. Moore would be the guy I'd go with here.
Okay. I think that's the direction I was planning on going as well.
It's close, though. It's very, very close, in my opinion, right now.
I think that reliability is just hard to pass up. Like, you don't last 9-10 years in the league unless, like, that's a long time, as you well know. That was your career. Like, you lasted that long because you could do these little things and you were reliable. And like, you don't last that long without that. So I think that's part one. Part two of that is like the younger guys feel like more likely to get to practice squad.
Yep.
So like Ja'Cory Brooks, unless he goes out and throws down in every single preseason game and is just balling out, in which case he will probably make the team. Like, he was an undrafted free agent this year. Everyone already passed on him 7 times. So you probably can get that guy to practice squad, even if he's got more long-term upside. All right. Offensive line.
Ooh, yeah, spicy.
Yeah, this is fun. So last year they kept 9. I had 8 on my initial list that I did last week.
Who were the 9?
I know there's going to have to be what?
Who were the 9 last year? Did they have like someone who was in between?
So last year they had Coleman, Allegretti, Biotish, Cosme, Wiley, Lucas, Scott, Dieter, Chris Paul.
Okay. Yep.
So I already need one change because Nate Erbig retired.
Yeah.
So Tunsil, Coleman, Biotish, Allegretti, Connerly, or Wiley. Those are your 5 starters. The other Connerly or Wiley is your first backup tackle. I think Trent Scott is definitely there. Here's the other thing that's changed as well is I think Sam Cosme is going to make the initial 53 on like active. Like the way they were talking, like, is he the pace that he was on? Like, is he going to make the team? Even if he's not available week 1, if he's available week 2 or 3, you just make him inactive the first couple of weeks.
I mean,
do you keep him on PUP through the first 4?
You've done ACL rehabs. You know how that goes. And like, I've done them. And like, yeah, you're back running around, but like I don't know. I probably would just be cautious with him. I don't care how good he looks. Like, I want him to get a couple of practices under his belt.
I don't disagree.
So I would probably start him on PUP. And again, like, even like, let's say he's not ready for week 1. He's going to be okay for week 2. Like, what's an extra 2 weeks to make sure that he's 100% healthy and feels good about the knee? Like, to me, I would rather err on just being a little bit more cautious, make sure he feels good, get him the reps, get him up to speed, get his cardio back into place. It just feels like that extra time is only going to help him, So like, that's kind of my approach. I agree that it sounds like he's way ahead of schedule, but I'm always a little bit leery of that because he did it in January, right? Or what was it?
Yeah.
December, something like that. So it was
January because it was the Lions game.
Yeah. So he's not even like really 6 months out yet, is he? Like, what?
So he would be September, if that's January 1, September 9 in terms of months of the year. So we're looking at, by week 1, it's almost 9 months, which is not unheard of.
Right.
And especially, I'm trying to think movement wise, like an offensive lineman, like it's not a ton of like,
it's just the
super
people around the leg. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The confidence in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you do have to push off laterally, although less so guard than tackle, although some of the pull stuff they do.
Right. So I would just say like, why not? I mean, if he's on schedule, make the 53, great. But if he's not, like, why rush it? Why, you know what I'm saying? Like,
okay, so let's keep him off for right now. So he starts the season on PUP. He doesn't take up a roster spot because he started preseason on PUP, as opposed to having to put him on PUP, which is a whole separate deal. Okay, so with that, you've got the 5 starters plus the extra swing tackle. I think Trent Scott is probably your 4th tackle, which means you need someone else inside, if not someone's else inside. Chris Paul
feels like Chris Paul right now. Like, and again, like we'll see how the preseason goes, but I think they like him. I think he's done a good job. Yeah, I think he would be a really interesting addition there. So
then the question is, do you go 9 with Dieter, or do you just wait till Cosme gets back and then move on somewhere else on the roster, and you have those 8 plus a 9th?
Well, I think it's interesting to think about, like Allegretti playing center, if he can do that, which it seems like he can. I think he took some snaps a couple days ago. I wasn't like super locked in, but I heard somebody mention that. That seems like the move I would like to go with, just to keep more. Just gives you more flexibility. The other name that I think is interesting is Foster Sorrell, because he plays guard and tackle, and he's done both in practice. So if you're looking for another kind of flexible piece that's played football, man, he played for the Chargers last year. So like that's one that I would just kind of say maybe, out like a puncher's chance of getting in there if he has a good preseason, because he looks good at tackle, looks good at guard. He's working with the 3s and the 2s. So like, you're not getting the 1s out there all the time. But if I was going to keep one, that would be it. It would be Paul and then probably him.
Okay. I think I'd rather just stay at 8, because the thing about an offensive lineman is like there's only so much value on special teams. And like, so you're just automatically kind of eating an inactive spot without a ton of optionality. Year, right? They did. And so 9 is definitely not unheard of.
And also the other point here too that's important to just acknowledge is like, with the larger practice squads, you could elevate. If you can get one of those guys to practice squad, you can just elevate them up on game day, which they did a bunch last year.
That's kind of my thought, is like the way Dieter played last year, I don't think it's going to be that hard to get him to practice squad, unless there's a team that's just like screwed at center somewhere else and they're like, we got to sign a guy who's played football. And if that's the case, like I don't know that I'm sweating it too much. I think I probably just would keep 8, hope at practice squad, because the other big difference in between this year and last year's rosters is we've kept an extra running back. I guess it's just the extra running back, and we only kept 2 at quarterback. So we do have room for 1 more on offense if we wanted. But there's just so many guys on defense that you want to keep. And then the other, thing that, whether you count this guy as a defense or an extra special teams guy, is Nick Bellore was signed week 1 last year.
Yeah.
And so like, the extra specialist, if you will, like you have to find room somewhere for that guy on the roster,
right?
Which is why I'm kind of inclined to say, I think we can get some of these guys backup O-linemen to practice squad, call them up as much as we need early on, and just go with 8. That's my inclination.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. It'll be interesting to see how guys, and this is another one where if some guys play really well, this changes, but I think as of right now, that feels good.
All right, so there's the offense. Let's go defense, and then if we need to circle back to this O-line because we come up with an extra spot, we will. Take Command Podcast, Logan Paulsen there, Craig Hoffman here. 53-man roster projection. To the defense we go. And Logan, last year they kept 9/10 on the D-line, the slash being Dante Fowler. This year that role is Von Miller's. So do you want to put, I guess the first question I would like to ask you about the defense is, are we playing their game and putting Von Miller at outside linebacker? Or are we counting him as a defensive lineman? The answer does not really matter.
I'd count him as a defensive lineman personally. I mean, just because I think that's going to fit his utilization. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay. So in that case, I've got 10 on my initial list that I did a couple weeks ago on the radio show. Those 10 are Von Miller, if we're counting him as a D lineman, Daron Payne, Javon Kinlaw, Johnny Newton, Dorrance Armstrong, Dedrick Wise, Jalen Holmes, Eddie Goldman, Cleveland Ferrell, and Javonte John Baptiste. That leaves off some really good players, including Jacob Martin, who I think I've read multiple places had an excellent camp. So, as the guy that's been out there every day, where are you at on this defensive line group? What changes do we want to make, if any?
Yeah, I think for sure, like knock him out of the park. Let's just go with those guys first. Are Armstrong, Payne, Kinlaw, Wise has had an excellent training camp so far. I think Farrell has had an excellent training camp, so that gets you to 5. Newton, because he was a draft pick last year, I think he's ascending. I think those 6 guys feel like,
and then Vaughn.
So those 7 guys feel like absolute locks. And then it's kind of stylistically like what you're looking for those last 2 spots, right? Because we're keeping 9 or we're keeping 10 here.
I think you keep 10. Like, I just think there's too many good players to not. And I don't know how many of these really good players you're going to get to practice squad.
Yeah. So,
like a Jalen Holmes, I think you could. I also think there's a chance that dude gets signed because he was real good last year in real NFL games.
Yeah, so of the guys that you've got on here, I would say for sure Goldman, and I'd say Jacob Martin. Martin makes it for me right now, which leaves one spot. So is that Jean Baptiste or is that Holmes for you?
Oh man, Dan's talked very highly of Baptiste. He was a draft pick. He's a little younger, I think, although I actually don't know because he was an old draft pick. So let me look this up real quick. Javonte Jean-Baptiste is 25. Jalen Holmes, okay, he is 29, so he is significantly older. If that's the case, then I'm going Javonte Jean-Baptiste.
Yeah. And I think that's where you get to. Because as much as I want to keep Holmes on the roster, and I think he gives you flexibility, like an old GM told me one time, like if anyone shows any signs of pass rush, you don't cut him. And Jacob Martin's done a good job of that. So I think that you feel good about Farrell, you feel good about Wise kind of as your first and second down pair. I think you hope Holmes gets the practice squad, so if you need to bring him up, you can. And I think you let that ride, And again, like that's hard for me because I really like Holmes. I thought he added a ton of value last year. I think he's had a good camp so far. But sometimes, like, if they like a young guy and they want to see him develop, because again, Baptiste did some really good things last year in season also. So I don't want to marginalize that, but these are the type. This is a tough position group because I think there's a lot of good football players here now.
Yeah, the whole let's build through the trenches. Good job. Now you're cutting guys that like Jalen Holmes. If he has to run 2-3 weeks with the ones in rotation for a guy, like you're not dead in the water.
Right.
I'm like, you're cutting that guy. And we even talk about Carl Davis, Sheldon Day, guys that were really good for this team in stretches last year.
Yeah.
And so I think the hope is you get some of those, maybe one of those guys as a veteran to practice squad. But like they're just not even in the running because of the depth that you have on this team. And it's funny because again, this is the position where there's been most consternation about the Commanders nationally. And I get it. Like there's no legit star edge rusher in 2025 amongst this group. You're hoping that Vaughn is some level of that, but this is 2025, not 2018 where he's defensive player of the year. I think that was the year he won it. So yeah, like this is a tough group. This is a really tough group, which is why I think you have to go 10.
Yeah, and I think all those guys deserve it. I think some guys that we haven't talked about or we just kind of mentioned passively, like they probably deserve it in some way too, but it's just a deep group. And I think the free agent guys that they brought in have done what they're supposed to do and have looked good doing it. And I think that's a testament to Adam Peterson.
His whole staff. All right. Linebacker. Last year they kept 5. It was Fowler, Wagner, Dante Fowler. We counted. So there's really only 4 true linebackers. Wagner, Luvu, Michael Walker, and then Dominique Hampton, who was a redshirt. So there was like 3 dudes. And then you had Nick Bellore, who they signed. It was either during week 1 or I think they actually signed him after week 1, after he got cut by Seattle. So this year, if we count Bellore as a linebacker, I've got 6.
6 counting Bellore.
I've got 6 counting Bellore.
And
Wagner, Luvu,
5 last year, right? Well, 4. Really.
Yeah. Well, and then the other caveat with last year is McGee went to IR or PUP or whatever it was. So like he was around. The problem is, the good thing is he's around for real this year as of we're doing this. Hopefully that stays. And then you have, some of the younger guys. So you have Wagner, Luvu, McGee, Hampton, Medrano, and then Bellore.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those groups that I think is going to be kind of up to the wire in terms of competition because, like, I think they've all had pretty good days. And so what are the question marks you have about, I think McGee is as lock as you're going to get. I think Bellore is pretty close to a lock. I wouldn't put him here with this group. I put him with the specialist, but you know what I mean? Like, he's that type of guy.
Right.
And then it comes down to Hampton and Medrano, and I think both of them have flashed at camp. Both of them have made explosive plays. I think the thing I want to see, and it's going to be absolutely critical for both these guys, is how well they tackle in the preseason game. Like that is going to be maybe the most important thing for them in terms of saying, I deserve to be on the roster. They've both been good teams value. They're both big and fast. So like, there's not a lot to dislike. They're green. There's developmental arcs for both of them. But how do you tackle and can you play linebacker against some of the better offensive linemen in the world when it comes to the NFL? And like today, for example, like I think Kane's had a great couple of days here. But just one of those plays that jumps out at you. He goes to fit the running back. It's Chris Rodriguez. He's a big, powerful dude, kind of gets spun to the ground on the tackle. And you're like, And again, that's one play. So I'm not saying he's had a hard time tackling or he hasn't been doing a good job, because I think he's been doing a great job. But that kind of sticks in your brain a little bit. It's like, has he fixed that issue from college yet? And so I want to see him tackle. And this, much like the running back, I think those last two spots, whether it's 6 or whether it's 5 or whether it's 4, is going to be decided on how well dudes are tackling in preseason games.
For sure. So we'll find out a lot more starting next week. But for right now, like, I don't even understand how this math is working. I feel like we've gone heavy at certain positions, and yet we have. But this is, like, again, why I guess the 8 versus 9 O line, like, that lets you keep Medrano and Hampton versus, okay, we have to try to get one of those guys to practice squad, and we keep a 9th. So that's that. The other position, we're going to go lighter than last year. I mean, I put it in air quotes. They are lighter than last year, but keeping 10 DBs is pretty standard. Last year, they kept 11. This year, I've got just 10. Lattimore, Amos, Sanderstill, Jones, and Noah Igbenogany at corner. And then Will Harris, Quan Martin, Jeremy Reeves, Tyler Owens, Percy Butler at safety. You've mentioned a couple of other names that have played really well, some UDFAs, both this year and last year, but I actually think that if everybody stays healthy, this is pretty straightforward, and these are the 10.
Yeah, I mean this group has been, like, definitely exceeded expectation, like 100%. So, like, again, like, as much as I think some of those young guys have played well and, like, flashed a little bit, you know, like some guys on teams, like Kevon Seymour had a great rep on teams today, like Ben Nichols.
That's a guy that I did want to ask about because Standig had him on.
Yeah, so he's big, he's long, like, he did a great job like in that vice drill they did today. Ben Nichols has done a good job in terms of flashing at times, interception and OTAs, a couple PBUs last couple. But again, I just think when you look at how well these guys have played that you have on your list, like, none of them have played themselves out of this position, out of this flagpole position. And in some ways, they've just solidified themselves each and every day. And so, barring them looking disastrous up in New England, like, I think, like, this is the group, you know, as much as I like, again, I've talked about how I think they've done a great job finding secondary UDFAs, guys that have done a good job in camp. But the guys you mentioned there, like, I mean, let's go through the list one more time just to kind of reiterate. Like, I think Percy Butler has been excellent. Tyler Owens has been excellent. Reeves offensively or defensively and on special teams has been excellent. Martin looks like he's ready for the next step. Harris has been that chess piece in the back end. Noah Igbenogany, man, I've been super impressed with him inside and outside. Just his ball skills seem to have improved. Jones is the pro's pro. And then Amos, Sanderstill, Lattimore, I've talked about them almost on every single show. So it's like, who you gonna upset there? It doesn't seem like anybody.
Well, the question would then be, like, is Seymour ahead of a guy like Medrano or Hampton?
Yeah.
And like that,
team's value. Yep.
Yeah. And this is where the battles between your 4th running back, your 4th tight end, your 9th offensive lineman, your 6th linebacker, your 11th deep, like wide receiver 6. Like, what if they just decide, like, none of these? If the answer is none of them, would you rather have Moore or Seymour? Like, wide receiver 6 or DB 11? Right. Which one would you rather have? Like, that's the question you have. And part of that is informed by the players themselves head to head. That's the number one deciding factor. The next is, like, who can we get to practice squad where we kind of get to keep both? What other options exist on the free agent market? Or do we think other teams are going to cut? Is there another guy? Because that's another factor too, right? Like, we've referenced this 53 from last year, but, like, the 53 that got named on cutdown day wasn't the same 2 days later. And that 53 wasn't the same a week after that. Jamin Davis made the initial 53, got cut, then got brought back and elevated, and then eventually got cut again for good later in the season. So there's just a ton of movement that happens. You can only operate within, like, what you're seeing here. We know there's a bunch of stuff happening at other camps and on other podcasts around the country and in other, written articles around the country. People are doing these 53s and saying, like, oh my God, is that guy going to get to practice squad? And I'm sure that, there's people in the Commanders front office that are reading all of those articles to understand the landscape of who might be on the chopping block. And that can obviously affect things quite a bit as well. So it's impossible, but that's our 53 for right now. Just to recap, because there's nothing better for podcasting than reading 53 names, Logan. So you ready to go?
Are you going to read them all?
Sure.
No.
I bet you I can do it pretty quickly.
Okay.
Daniels, Mariota, Robinson, Eckler, McNichols, Krosky Merritt, a.k.a. Bill, Ertz, Sinnott, Bates, Yankoff, McLaurin, Samuel, McCaffrey, Lane, Noah Brown, Chris Moore. Offensive line, Tunsil, Coleman, Biotish, Allegretti, Connerly, Wiley, Paul, and Scott. We see we're already at the defense, Logan. This ain't that bad. Von Miller, Deron Payne, Kinlaw, Newton, Armstrong, Wise, Martin, Goldman, Furl, Jean Baptiste, Wagner, Luvu, McGee, Hampton, Ballore, Madrano, and then Lattimore, Amos, Sanderstill, Jones, Igbenogany, Harris, Martin, Reeves, Owens, Butler, with, of course, how could we forget Tressway, Matt Gay, and Tyler Ott as your 3 specialists.
Perfect.
That's 53. And I didn't even count, Logan. I let the formula in the spreadsheet count for me. You laugh, but we get out here and we do a 54. People are going to let us know.
They'll be upset. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, what? I wonder if a team's ever done that by accident. They submit a roster to the league with too many dudes on it.
It seems unlikely, but crazier things have happened, I'm sure.
Crazier things certainly have happened in this very silly league. All right, so that's our show for today. When we get back on Monday, we'll have a couple more practices to review. Maybe we'll have a guest on. We'll see kind of what everybody's doing schedule-wise. So we'll figure that out over the weekend and be back with you early next week, again, Monday or Tuesday, depending on how the schedule shakes out with everything that's going on. So we'll also potentially have some talk about the RFK stuff. I'll be back on the radio if you're listening to this on Thursday, tomorrow if you're listening to this on Friday, this afternoon. And we will have full coverage there of the RFK vote in City Council, which is expected to pass, which leaves just a final formality vote in September to bring the Commanders back to the RFK site. So a lot of stuff going on off the field as well, but in a good way for once for this franchise, from what we've been talking about for the last half decade or so. All right, for Logan Paulsen, I am Craig Hoffman, and we will see you next time on Take Command.